All right, I'm going to put us live on the webinar. And then I will let you know when we are live on HHTV.
Did everybody receive the flyer that says how they log on?
Yes. We are live on HHTV. We are live on HHTV. We may begin.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fireside Chat for Friday, October 30th, the day before Halloween. You know, each time we have these fireside chats and we complete them, I sometimes wonder, how could we possibly have enough information by the next month to share with residents? Well, we have a packed schedule today, and I'll go over some of those items in just a couple of minutes. So hopefully you are able to be watching this via HHTV, Horizon House TV, or on the webinar, or on the YouTube. So we have a number of different ways in which to reach you, and we're trying different things to see what works best, so we'll be interested in your feedback. I want to make a mention of COVID fatigue. You know, this is a national consequence. Everyone around the country is having a difficult time adjusting continually to what's required to stay safe during COVID. And we just want to urge everyone to just keep at it, you know, wearing the mask, keeping the distance, washing your hands frequently is the real way in which we prevent the virus from spreading here at Horizon House. So please do your very best. I know it's we're all reaching fatigue and don't want to do it, but this is the key to staying safe. We had an emeritus past president's emeritus Zoom call last week, and I'll talk more about that later. But I wanted to mention that during that time, we were discussing about whether or not you know, it was comfortable for prospective residents to move into senior living communities during this time of COVID. And you know, we've had some challenges where people are reluctant to move. But Karen Lane mentioned that, you know, she's a past president. She's moving into Horizon House, and she said that the isolation that she experienced living in her own condominium without being able to see her friends, without being able to go to restaurants, without having the social interaction, was a terribly isolating experience. And I thought of the term shared isolation. We are all in isolation, but we're sharing the experience with others. And I liken that to the idea of grief. If you are grieving the loss of a loved one or something, and you do it all by yourself, it takes a little longer to get to a place of having hope. But when you're sharing that grief with others, it seems like we process it differently and we're able to get to hope a little quicker. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe the shared isolation and living in community at Horizon House is going to enable us to get to a more positive place sooner than what someone might experience if they were just living at home in their condo or their apartment or their home. I want to say something about creativity. I think everybody's experiencing terrific examples of staff creativity with the decorations right by the dining room. Today we've got a number of places that are decorated. You know, and also YouTube videos of talent shows. You know, notwithstanding the isolation, we want to keep trying to have fun. We want to keep trying to do new things, keep people interested, and keep reminding ourselves that notwithstanding isolation, we're still experiencing a lot of good and welcome and healthy community. So keep it up on your part, and certainly the staff will as well. Now, I just want to run through a little bit of the agenda items, and then I'm going to pass it over to one of my colleagues. We'll have our new resident introductions by Valerie, some new staff from Brenda. We're going to have another one from posture and computer ergonomics from Divya, inner wellness and coping strategies, you know, a critical thing at this time. And Linda is an ideal person to share some thoughts on that. Eli will cover some campus improvements. You know, we do want to make sure that we're mindful that, well, we hope there's no disturbances during the election week, since it's not going to likely be a day, it'll be a week. We are going to take extra precautions to keep everyone safe here at Horizon House. We've got some food service updates, and we also have a little bit of financial update from Christy. The K4 Connect and some of our communication updates will be covered by Brian Levitt and Laura. Resident Council update from Marianne. Board message from Ann, and resident care connector and some flu and COVID updates from Lori. And then talking a little bit about some of the kind of the seriousness about how we have to approach this virus during this time from George. And then I'll circle back around with everyone to cover some final announcements, and we'll take questions. If you have questions, you can email them to Beth and we'll cover them at the end. Or you can, if you're on HHTV, that's how you would do that. Or if you are on YouTube, or if you are online on the webinar, you can use the chat function and type in your question, and we'll capture that and be able to answer that at the end of the program. So now I'd like to turn it over to some new introductions from Valerie. Take it away.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to introduce some of our newest residents to Horizon House, Jim and Carolyn Hitter. Jim was born in Brooklyn, New York, and Carolyn in Yakima, and between them have lived in New York, Connecticut, Salt Lake City, Sunnyvale, Kirkland, Sierra Leone, Micronesia, and Almaty, Kazakhstan. In addition, Jim and Carolyn are experienced world travelers, having visited over 70 countries. Jim earned a BS in mechanical engineering and an MBA, and has worked as an aerospace engineer, Vista volunteer, Peace Corps volunteer, and a volunteer at Seattle International Film Festival and Wintergrass. He belongs to Eastside Runners and returned Peace Corps groups. Jim enjoys baking bread, cooking, running, and computers in his free time. Carolyn holds a BA and MA in English literature and worked as a teacher in the Lake City School District for 30 years. Lake Washington School District for 30 years. She has served as a teacher, trainer, Peace Corps volunteer in Sierra Leone and Yap, and as an associate Peace Corps director in Kazakhstan. Also an avid runner, Caroline has participated in 6 marathons with an impressive personal record of 3 hours and 40 minutes and has won many age group races. In her free time, Carolyn loves to quilt. On the next slide, Beth, is Tom and Kathy Cullen. Tom was born in Dublin, Ireland, and has also lived in Prince Rupert, Edmonton, Alberta, Terrace, Dawson Creek, BC, Canada, of course, and Seattle, of course. He earned a PhD in educational psychology and worked as a research associate professor at the UW School of Medicine and as a volunteer with Drayton Harbor Oyster Farm. In his leisure time, Tom enjoys bridge and reading. Kathy was born in Dubuque, Iowa, and has lived in Rochester, Chicago, Terrace, BC, Canada, Minneapolis, and Blaine. She is a registered nurse and earned an MA in political science and worked as a registered nurse and served as a board member of the University Plaza Association, as well as a hospice volunteer. In her free time, Kathy loves reading, working on crosswords, and water aerobics. Welcome to Horizon House, Jim, Carolyn, Tom, and Kathy. Next up is Brenda to introduce new staff.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So for the month of October, we've had one new hire, and we are glad to actually begin introducing pictures so you can put a face to the new names. For the month of October, we had Ton join us as our dishwasher. All right, and that's it for this month, so we can go ahead and turn the slide over.
Good morning. My name is Divya, and I'm giving a presentation on posture and ergonomics. I'm sure all of y'all heard about posture, but if you're wondering what's this new term on computer ergonomics, it's basically a way of fitting the user who's using a computer or a workstation so that it fits well and you have less risk injuries or stress injuries to your joints. And have less disorders. Next slide. The objectives of my presentation are to let viewers know about the poor posture, the effects of poor posture on your body. What are the components that I would be going over if I was called for an ergonomic evaluation? And the final one is, what are the ergonomic changes that you could do at your apartment to decrease the risk of stress injuries? Next slide. Before I start my presentation, I would like to share with you a research which was done by the PEW Research Center. Now, mind you, this study was done in 2005-2015. It was a study to find out how much time the seniors take to spend in front of your computer. And once they finished the study, they realized that the seniors spend almost 4.5 hours in a day in front of the computers. That decreases the amount of exercise time, socializing, and reading. Next slide. And as you know, this study was done in 2005-2015. I would wonder, since March, when we started this global pandemic, you could only imagine how much socialization and leisure time is virtual. And that is the reason why I feel that it is a need of the hour to get an ergonomic evaluation and work on good posture so that we have less body and posture injuries. Next slide. Common postural injuries that you would face with sitting in front of the computer would be shoulder, elbow, wrist tendonitis. If you have a history of a neck, back, or low back arthritis, sitting in a static position would aggravate these conditions, and it is common to hear that you have symptoms down your arms and down your legs. So that could be another postural problem. And a very common stress injury that most of us face with improper posture is called as carpal tunnel syndrome, wherein if you don't have good support to your wrist and your elbows, you could get numbness and tingling in your fingers. I would come in to have an ergonomic evaluation with the residents. A couple of things that I would look at is your computer screen. Look at if you guys own an adjustable chair, the positioning of your keyboard. Hopefully you guys are using a document holder because constant looking up and down as you're typing could create neck injuries. And definitely lighting is very important so that you have good vision as you are using your computer. This is an ideal postural image. I'm not sure about you, but I just don't have this image in front of me or be in this posture at end of my workday. But if you had to have an ideal posture, this is how it would look. What I'm looking at when I evaluate computer ergonomics is the distance between your eyesight and the computer monitor. You've got to always keep it at your eye level. If you have an adjustable chair, definitely increase the height of the adjustable chair so that your eye level is at the level of the computer monitor. Adjust your armrest so that your elbows are 90 degrees rested and the wrist is placed on the keyboard tray. I would recommend a footrest, hoping that your feet are not dangling in air and they are rested well either on the floor or they're placed on the footrest. This definitely would decrease your postural injuries. A couple of changes that you could do in your apartment would be having a look at your computer monitor. Now, if you're using one of those monitors which could be lifted, please add a couple of books so that your eye level is at the same level of the computer monitor. Couple of us that use iPad could definitely use an iPad holder. Beth, for a second, could you go to the next slide? Yeah, so this is an image of an iPad holder. On the left, it's a commercial one, which can be which you can buy from Amazon or any of the local stores. It has a variation of height, so you could use your iPad or your phones, that way maintaining a good posture. On the right, this was done by my kids. My son is 7 years old. And they love FaceTiming their grandparents when they have dinner. So they built this iPad holder with recycling material. So it's just an image that I would like to share because I know Horizon House residents are very creative. So it could be a project that everyone who's into woodworking or being creative to build one of these could do it for themselves and maybe a great Christmas gift. Previous slide, Beth. The other thing that I would look at is adjusting the chair. So if you own an adjustable chair, please use it. Try to adjust the height of the seat, increase the depth of the seat, height of the armrest. That way you are comfortable. If your feet dangle in air, definitely use a footrest so your feet are comfortable. And if you end up taking multiple calls during screen time, I would highly recommend that you use a headphone. The last point is taking multiple stretch breaks. I know everyone's busy attending Zoom calls, taking part in either Scrabble or bridge games. I would highly recommend that every 20 minutes, just get out of your chair, stretch, maybe sip a glass of water and come back to it. So not more than 20 minutes in front of the computer if you can afford to take a stretch break. This slide is for some of you who are falling asleep as I'm talking. So I'm hoping that you're focused on the presentation. If you're wondering what all these animals are doing in my presentation here, I just love these views from the internet. All of us are of different shapes and sizes, and one thing doesn't fit all, but I love the way that the giraffe, the beaver, and the gorilla have changed the ergonomic styles and adapted what works for them the best. On the first image, the computer monitor is elevated. On the second image, I love the way the beaver is sitting upright and using a headphone, which is great. On the third image, the poor gorilla doesn't have an adjustable chair. So the least he or she is doing is using an armchair and sitting upright. So the slide is say that if a giraffe, beaver, and a gorilla could do it, I'm sure as humans, we could give it a try and work on good posture. Next slide. Concluding slide. Just like every dentist talks and asks you about flossing, every physical therapist will ask you about maintaining a good posture. If you follow some of these ergonomic changes, I'm sure it'll help you address and reduce the risk of stress. a final announcement from our clinic that we are providing a free balance screen for all the Horizon House residents. Unfortunately, couldn't provide a computer ergonomic screen because of COVID restrictions, but please do sign up for the free balance screen. You'll find flyers all around Horizon House. If you could call Max at our PT clinic or the front desk to sign up. We are taking sign-ups for next week, and following which we will be calling you to schedule for a free balance screen. All right, that's the end of my presentation. Up next, Inner Wellness and Coping Strategies by Linda Purdy.
Good morning, everyone. We are all talking about something similar, so I have a slightly different view of how we can take care of ourselves and each other. And part of what I'm presenting is probably stuff you already know. So I just want to normalize what we're going through and affirm that, yeah, you're not going crazy, that we're all going through a lot of the same things. And as I was doing a little research around the stress that we're all experiencing and the best ways to cope with it, I found 2 medical articles that, to my surprise, named what we're going through. I've been calling it the side effects of COVID-19 without having the disease, but they're actually a name related to the stress and how we are experiencing this time of pandemic. The first article was on June 11th. It was published, and they called it COVID stress syndrome. And they did some research that, especially around China, which had already been involved in this pandemic, and they suggested in that China, in their adaptation of the pandemic, there was probably 25% of the population having experienced moderate to severe levels of stress. And there is a worldwide emotional distress in response to this pandemic. And so each country has, as they've been doing their own research and combining it with other countries, it is amazing to find out it's not just at Horizon House, it's everywhere. There's also further research needed to determine the lasting effects after this pandemic has passed. So hopefully when the pandemic is over, we can kind of go back to some sort of normal, but we really won't know what that is. So in contrast to previous pandemics, the scope of the distress-related symptoms that we are experiencing are much broader than they've been in the past. The other article was published in October 5th. They call it post-COVID stress disorder. And so emerging research there measures the impact of traumatic stressors related to the pandemic, as well as other types of stress exposure. So the CDC published a survey of more than 5,000 people, which said 40% had at least one adverse mental or behavioral health problem related to this pandemic. And symptoms of the stressors or related disorders by people were 26%. Anxiety and or depression was experienced by 31%. Substance abuse and using other substances like alcohol, drugs to cope was about 13%. Suicide consideration, I mean serious suicide consideration, showed up to be around 10%, and suicidal ideation was much higher, 25%, and mostly that was in 18 to 24-year-olds. So that was kind of a shock to me. One of the other areas where we also are a part of this is what they noticed about non-paid caregiver adults. And that was a 31% of non-paid caregiver adults were experiencing a lot of extra stress. So in our circumstance, the spouses who are caring for a spouse or caring for someone else in their life will experience an added stressor besides what everyone else is having related to isolation. It's one of the reasons we offer a in-person Care Partners support group, because it's just important to be able to share what you're going through with someone else. So the pandemic itself is now considered a traumatic event. but we're also used to living with other ones, which I've been much more aware of this week, and I'm sure you all have too. Besides a pandemic, we're also experiencing election anxiety. And that is, especially next week, we'll have it even more. But even now, we're going through this election anxiety. We may have been going through it for a year or so. Also, we're nervous and stressed around the ideas of violence from protests, including what can happen after the election. But we've been surrounded by it here in Seattle, and that makes some people nervous. The climate concerns that we're reading and learning about, where there's fires in the west part of the United States, and hurricanes and floods in the eastern part, and droughts, and just experiences of climate that are catastrophic in our world today. And finally, the one that we are also experiencing here has to do with our building renovation and the effects of that, where places that were normal for us to hang out with and now are boarded up or changed or move around, can have a physical and emotional experience. Going through the tunnel from the North Tower to the promenade. I love that now there's pictures and things to look at, because many residents have just told me it felt like you were kind of being choked as you're walking through that tunnel. And so thankfully, Eli will give us some hope after I'm done talking. So these are things that we're probably all feeling, and I wanted to name some of those symptoms because they'll be symptoms you're experiencing and be familiar with, and at least now you'll know that they're not unusual. So the first one that is the most important one has to do with anxiety and then depression. This is a stress-related anxiety, and so many of us are feeling it and aren't as even aware of it. And a lot of that anxiety is caused by fear. Fear of the virus, fear of what's happening with the election, fear of so many different things. And so that'll be something that we need to cope with. Substance abuse or overabuse in order to cope is a common symptom. Sleep disorders or poor sleep quality is something that is a common symptom. Headaches, lethargy, suicidal ideation, social media exposure actually increases stress. When you're looking at social media all day long and you're looking at what the rest of the world is going through, unless you find something that makes you laugh or is pretty fun, it can cause extra stress because it's all pretty scary out there. Forgetfulness and increased memory loss, including some increased symptoms of dementia, are also common related to these kinds of stress. So when you're feeling more forgetfulness or memory loss than you have in the past, you know, you're in good company. And so we can all finish each other's sentences or just kind of wait for the answer to come when you start a sentence. Also, we've noticed increased health problems. And these aren't necessarily COVID health problems. They're other health problems that have an increase, probably even ones we've had before. And so we're noticing more hospitalizations from some of our residents. And that just happens from this anxiety. Anger and anxiety and stress affect our body and not just our emotions. Loneliness is one of the hardest things to deal with. Being alone is one thing, but we can be with lots of people and still feel lonely. And so that is something that we have strategies to work on, and those are what I'm going to introduce next. And the last one might be weight loss or weight gain, depending on your propensity, way your body works. You may have noticed me as you've seen me in the hallway. I've gained at least 10 pounds, especially when I was working from home and the kitchen was way closer to my office than I needed. So some of these strategies that come from both of these articles, some you already do and are doing, so I want you to feel good about that. Some of them are watching specific TV programs and movies. Some are people keeping busy cleaning, tidying up, or sorting. There's a reason a Monday market is full with amazing stuff, but a lot of you are sorting through things like pictures, documents that you haven't looked at in years. Spending time talking or texting with friends, reminding yourself the purpose of self-isolation and giving yourself a pep talk. It's important to help the community. You can say that about what you're doing, even though we're tired of it. Spend time cooking or connecting on social media, spending time on hobbies, starting a new one, spend time reading or writing. We have several residents who are writing books now. And so I'm looking forward to, when this is over, how many authors will be sharing from their published books. And I know we're already having people reading some of their writings and sharing those on HTV. A lot of people are searching the internet to find new and interesting things. Look for things that make you laugh, things that make you smile, because all of that energy, that positive energy, helps your stress. And remind yourself that this will be over soon. It's okay to schedule a routine. A lot of people who are doing really well, what I recognize is the routine they have. They get up in the morning, they might do some meditation, they might be reading something like a daily reading. They start the exercise program that's on HHTV or their own, and they have a plan for their day, and they go through that routine, and that routine has its own comfort. And it doesn't mean you can't go outside the routine, but it can be really helpful so we don't feel so lost. Take online courses or start something new for you, a new learning experience. Practice some of the relaxing techniques and exercises that you're learning from our wellness department. And starting next Monday, we will have a 3-week series, which will also be available online to people afterwards, on mindfulness meditation. Catherine Dobson will be coming back, and she will be working with anger and anxiety and resilience and fear and the things that we're experiencing now, including her next one will be around what we're feeling and stress related to the election coming. And so some of the other strategies for another article had to do with the Zoom groups. We're doing a lot of Zoom groups. Keep it up. I know it's not the same thing as being with someone, but keep it up. And if you can think of some in-person purpose groups you can do, then start some of those. We have a meditation group happening. We have some of the Quaker people meeting in silence. We have now a men's group that has quite a lot of men enjoying it, and that is on Zoom, but find other ways to be together. Practice a spiritual practice. There's a lot of online religious services that you can be a part of, or other spiritual readings, wisdom. Be outside in the outdoors, especially in this fall colors, something that just gets you outside of yourself and helps you have some sense of peace. So continue to take your walks outside, even though it's cold. And if it's too cold or rainy, then take your walks inside, because all of that exercise helps our bodies and our minds. Continue to work on projects. Find a project to do. When you finish one, think of another one, because the projects give you something also to focus on besides how you're feeling. And like last time, one of the things that I stressed that we at Horizon House have as a gift, and not a lot of places do. My aunt, they're socially isolated. They don't have it in their adult senior community. We have the ability to visit one another, even if it's one person in one person's apartment, or one person with a couple, or a couple with a couple. You can visit one another. So you can't eat together or drink together. If you want to eat a meal, go to the B1 patio and be socially distanced in those tables that have umbrellas that cover you. Make a reservation for the heat to be turned on. But we can see one another in other ways. And so be purposeful related to that. And the last thing I want to introduce related to that has to do with something you might call like friendly visitors. So we have the opportunity to make some new friends and to check in with one another. And we have some people who've called me up and said, I would love to meet a new friend. I would love to find somebody outside of my normal social circle or my family that I can connect with. And so I would like to invite a program, and I would like you to contact me, or hopefully we'll see something in the alert in the future. But if you're interested in making a new friend, whether you're just talking on the phone or you're meeting in a place like the dining room here in the community, just to kind of give you a chance to tell your story and how you're doing and listen to someone else's story, let me know. Because there are a lot of you who sit in your apartments alone. And a lot of you who come out and you do things outside, but you're still alone. And I want to encourage you to not always be alone. but to find ways to connect with one another, because you can, and because we are in this together and we can get through this together. Thank you so much. And may you all find new ways to find peace and smiles and happiness in the midst of what we're going through. One of our next speaker will be giving us hopefully some good news about what's going on with renovations and the campus improvements. And that's Eli Lemensky.
Yes, good morning and happy Halloween. You can't tell, but I'm wearing cowboy boots. So let's talk campus improvements. Thank you, Linda. We'll hopefully there's some, everybody feels hopeful for what I have to say here. Starting with construction in progress. We've got 3 projects underway, the Fireside Lounge, the Salon, and also a reclad project of the Sky Lounge and East Tower Elevator Penthouse. Beginning with the Fireside Lounge. Next slide. Is we expect the substantial completion to be the end of November. Construction is a finicky thing. Every single day, it seems to me that there is a variable that risks this timeline, but as of right now, it's still the end of November. Due to COVID, there's been some manufacturing issues, there's been some delivery issues, there's been, just different types of issues, and a lot of them are related to COVID. But as of right now, we're expecting the end of November. Unfortunately, the new furniture has been delayed. So when we do open up at the end of November, it won't be necessarily this grand reveal that at least I was always hoping with new furniture, but that will come shortly. Next, the salon. We currently have the temporary salon in use. The construction is underway and it's expected to complete in January. And then also next is the construction and is the reclad of the Sky Lounge and East Tower Elevator Penthouse. So the exterior siding, we call it cladding. When we were finishing up the roof and we're trying to tie it into the exterior walls of the Sky Lounge and other structures on the roof, it was discovered that the wall assembly was completely deficient, and it was deficient at the time of its original construction. So we've been assessing the conditions and engineering a solution. It's now been permitted. We're now reviewing the costs and ensuring that the scope of the work and the cost is commensurate to our Horizon House's actual needs. And we will likely start the project in within the next couple of months and have a clearer idea of when that work will actually finish. Around the January timeframe, we'll know when that work, an estimated time when that work will finish. And then next is the upcoming projects. Anderson Hall is about to take off, and also we have the Central and East Towers. So starting with the Anderson Hall project, we've just recently reformed the design team. It's being led by Methuen and Anderson Construction with consultants of various disciplines such as audiovisual and acoustics and lighting. And the design team will be working closely with the Event Support Committee that helps guide that scope. The Event Support Committee over a year ago provided us with a report to identify all the deficiencies and all the hopes and dreams that we want out of Anderson Hall, and we're going to put it in, we'll do our best to manifest that into reality. The design phase is expected to extend through March of 2021. And next is the Central and East Towers. This isn't a new project, but it has been consistently delayed due to COVID. A big portion of the project is to enter and do some work in occupied apartments of the central tower, and plus a lot of work in the corridors. So for the sake of everybody's safety, it just doesn't seem like a smart idea to start this project until we're clear of COVID, or at least that we've reduced a lot of the restrictions. And then next is the future projects. So we're always looking ahead. We want to renovate the dining room and bistro. That design will likely start before the end of the year, or at least shouldn't say the design, the identifying the scope and setting what we would call the programming of the spaces. Also, we plan to renovate the university garage entrance, near Valet and the B1 connecting B1 corridors. Also, supported living will receive a refresh, enhance some common areas, and make it an overall more enjoyable space for the residents and for staff in supported living. And then lobby and reception area will be redesigned. And on B1, the wellness center and game area will also be redesigned. So, and then so a brief mention of apartment refurbishments. There's been, we started 2020 with the intention of refurbishing at least 20 apartments. And those people know who they are. They've been on a list. They've been, we're likely planning for this refurbishment to happen, their refurbishment to happen, but due to COVID restrictions, it's not ideal to do this work in occupied apartments. And some residents may wonder, well, gosh, we see so many construction workers on site. Why is it safe for those projects, but not safe for refurbishments? Well, the key distinction is that essential construction and less essential construction. So with that being said, the essential construction is, sorry, I lost my slides. The less essential construction would be apartments that are completely usable right now, but for instance are occupied, and it just doesn't create a safe environment. And then also I think next after that, I wanted to briefly mention FIA, the First Hill Improvement Association. So this is our local neighborhood organization that is tasked with being a representative, I guess, of businesses and residents in the community. If we think of urban design in terms of solving social issues, urban designers will definitely tell you that urban design has that power to solve social issues. This is the organization that people can actually participate in, purchase a membership, get updates, and provide a voice. So the website is firsthill.org. Horizon House has been a corporate member of the First Hill Improvement Association for several years. First Hill, we call it FIA, by the way, FHIA. FIA has two main committees. One is that Urban Design and Public Space Committee. The other is the Transportation Committee. And we advocate for homeless outreach services, and we closely track development that's going on and communicate that to everybody. And we also, FIA also interacts directly with the developers, and we provide occasional updates, even here on the premises of Horizon House during a non-COVID situation, the plans of local developments. We have a couple of residents on site that are fairly active. Miriam Studermeister obviously is very engaged with this committee, and I encourage everybody to consider getting a membership with FIA, an individual membership. It's only $25, and especially with COVID going on, there's been less revenue generating activities to keep FIA a vibrant organization. So please consider participating. That's it for me. I now turn you over to Brian Holtz, who will discuss, I believe, the election day and perhaps civil disturbance. Brian?
Thank you, Eli. And there's a lot that you were talking about associated with what's happening inside of our campus and our community. And there's a lot going on. So appreciate all those things that you're doing, as well as the things that are going on up at First Hill, which is an important organization for us. And it's what's happening outside of our community. And so that's a little bit of what I'm talking about too. As in construction, this year also has its uncertainties that can happen. And there's some things that we know that are going to happen, and there's some unknowns. And so we know that there's an election day coming up, or as Mike mentioned, an unknown outcome of time if we won't know for maybe a week or so. We don't know when the outcome of the election will be decided. We do know that a number of people will be disappointed with the outcome of this election. However, we don't know how these people that are disappointed will behave due to what comes of the outcome of our elections. And so there has been civil unrest in the city and it's been happening in our country. And we know that some of it is related to political and some of it for some other reasons. And so we don't know if our community will be impacted. It's unsure, it's a possibility. However, what we are doing, and so that you can be rest assured, is that we are planning and thinking about it. We had residents ask, and we as staff and the leadership have been talking about and communicating on just in case. And so there was a communication that went to the residents, and we've communicated with our staff and managers about if something were to happen, that there's some preparations that we can do in advance. The local authorities, you may have heard in the media, the police, the federal authorities are preparing in cities of things that they may need to do to prepare if there was unrest due to the election and some of the outcomes of the election. We'll certainly know more. There's only a handful of days left until election day, and we'll know more building up into the day of the election. However, some of the things that our staff have been doing to prepare is that we'll have extra security patrols. Our lead security officer, Les Brooks, is actually a police officer, and he and I have been in close contact and will be working on extra security patrols at all times of the day, and especially if something were to be closer to our community. We've talked to staff about ordering extra supplies just in the event that something happens to be prepared prior to the election day. Further, we've mentioned to residents, what can you do in building up to this upcoming week is to think about maybe getting your groceries early or any errands that you may need to run, and keep an eye on the news. We don't really know if something will happen and if it'll come close to our community if it happens in our city. So if there is some unrest that's in our city, that the reminders are that if it's near Horizon House, is to let the front desk staff know, and they are dialed in to communicate with me and others in the community to make sure that we're aware. Give any information that you observe if there is something near Horizon House. If there are demonstrations, we want you to avoid the area. Don't engage with argument or become involved in any crimes, of course. We never condone that. And so we ask that you remove yourself from the area if it feels unsafe. Consider if you're going for a walk, what's happening out in the greater community. So we don't think something is going to happen near our community, but we are planning, we're preparing in advance, and we're continuing to look at what could happen and what we can do as a community to be prepared. So we'll know more as time goes next week and the election day on Tuesday and what the outcomes are. So that was all that I had on this topic. And so next I'm introducing Sarah, who will give us some updates on dining services.
Hello, everyone. Well, I want to first introduce myself because I'm still a relatively new face around here, and there's a lot of you that I haven't gotten to meet yet. But for those of you that I have, I want to thank you for your warm welcome here to Horizon House. I've really enjoyed the time that I've spent here so far, so thank you for being so welcoming to me as I start. And I'm going to wait for Beth to get my slides up, but first you'll see I wanted to include a few pictures from some of my favorite events that we had the chance to do in dining services this October. So if you had the chance to attend any of our socially distanced barbecues, or we had a happy hour as well, we want to thank you for coming to those. It's so fun to see your faces, or at least part of your faces. So thank you again if you had the opportunity to attend any of those. And you can go to my next slide, Beth. I have a few dining service updates, and they're just to do with some changes that you've probably seen on the menus recently. So the first thing that I hope you've noticed is that we do have some nutrition facts that are available on select items now. In particular, I know that sodium content has been very highly requested, so I'm excited that we are able to provide you with that information now. So the menus are all reformatted, and you should be seeing those facts available now. And the other thing that's been very highly requested that we've been able to do for you all, and we're very excited about, is the addition of our new daily menu. So that's been up and running for a bit now, but along with that, we have had to reduce a few of the daily specials that we offer. We are now down to 2 instead of 3, which you've probably noticed. And the reason for that is just being that we are now providing a wide variety of daily items. So in order to streamline the kitchen, you will see a reduced number of daily specials there. But we have added a new weekly vegetarian special. And the reason that we wanted to do that is because in reducing our number of daily specials, a lot of those items that got eliminated were unfortunately vegetarian items, because we do have a lot lower demand for those items. But we do want to make sure that we're still providing options for our non-meat eating residents. So you can look for the introduction of new weekly vegetarian specials to replace some of those daily specials that we have reduced. And in coming out with that new daily menu, we are very busy down in the kitchen at mealtime. So I have one more reminder on our dining service updates that the earlier you can order your meals, the more that will help us out to really streamline things and provide you with better service, particularly at dinner time. If you do have the opportunity to place your orders before 6:30 p.m., that really does help us out a lot to ensure that we're again streamlining our delivery and providing you with the best service that we possibly can. So something to keep in mind if you're able to help us that way. And the other brief thing I'm just going to discuss today is a little overview of our plans for Thanksgiving, so that you can start getting excited about that and being prepared for that. So on Thanksgiving Day, we are going to have our normal breakfast. That'll be from 8 to 10 a.m. And then our special Thanksgiving meal is going to be served from 12 to 3. So it will be at lunchtime. And there's going to be 2 options for this. You are either going to be able to have your food delivered to your room as normal, or you can come pick it up in the dining room. And how that's going to work, we obviously want to be very careful about social distancing and safety. So we're going to have you call the front desk, and what you'll do is you'll reserve a 15-minute time slot sometime in between 12 and 3 p.m. And that will be your designated time to come pick up your food, so that we are ensuring that things don't get too over congested downstairs and that we can maintain safe distance. So when you call the front desk and make that appointment, you'll also be placing your order of your menu items, so that it also helps us streamline things on Thanksgiving Day and make sure that we're moving smoothly. So again, if you do decide to pick up your order, you'll be making that appointment and placing it ahead of time. And then on Thanksgiving Day, during your window, you will just come down to the dining room. I will be there to greet you, and I will already have your menu filled out and ready. So then you will just be able to move through our food line at a safe distance, and Oliver will load you up with all of your Thanksgiving goodies. And then you're going to be able to snake around on the other side of the dining room and head back upstairs that way, so that we again, are ensuring safe protocols, but are also able to do something special for you on Thanksgiving. And again, you always have the option of just having your food delivered if you're more comfortable that way. But if you would like to come downstairs and see the beautiful Thanksgiving decorations that I'm sure Oliver is going to have up, and wish a happy holiday to your favorite dining services staff members, then we would love to see you on that day. So keep a lookout for a Thanksgiving menu that will be coming to your boxes. And then after that, we can begin the process of setting up our reservations. And again, there won't be dinner service on that day. We're going to be offering the Thanksgiving meal at lunchtime. So 12 to 3, if you'd like to have leftovers for dinner, you can always order extra. We'll be happy to provide you with as much Thanksgiving food as you would like. So look forward to that. And that is all I have for today, actually. Again, I just want to thank you for your engagement and for all of your wonderful feedback. And I am going to put in a final plug. I hope that you've all noticed in your menus the addition of Sarah's Nutrition Corner. So I have a mini column that's going to be appearing every week. And if you have any questions on eating well, on nutrition trends, or any information that you see coming out, please shoot me an email, and I would love to communicate with you all via that column every week. It's a fun way for me to stay in touch when I'm not getting to see as many of you face to face. So that's my plug for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Christy now, I believe, who's going to give us a financial update.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome to Horizon House. That was a nice update. And happy Halloween to everybody. I am in costume, but you may not be able to tell, so I'm just going to stand up and maybe you can guess what this is. Yes, I am a domino, and the accounting department are dominoes today. So if you see us around individually, not quite the same effect, but together it looks pretty good. So, well, thank you. I'm happy to be back to give you our third quarter update. Good news is that we're doing better than we expected. So, early on this year, I ran some projections right after the pandemic hit, and we thought we might not end up with a positive net operating margin or net income. And I'm happy to report that we are holding on to that positive margin that we ended up with at the end of the second quarter. So you can see on our chart here, we started off the year strong. The red line is our budget. The blue line is where we're actually at. And we have been able to stay above that red line for the entire year. It is dipped a little bit at the end of September, but hopefully we're going to be able to maintain that through the remainder of the year. I think I just hit the wrong button. Did you do that, Beth? Okay, she did. Thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, we're doing better than budgeted. But we do know that we have some expenses and some year-end adjustments that are coming, and that will likely erode some of that margin that we have. But there is sufficient margin there to absorb those costs, and so it does look like we'll end up with a positive margin. Our occupancy, let's see. I guess my slides are a little bit backwards, so that's okay. So we'll start with the occupancy. So occupancy, I talk a lot about occupancy for both IL and SL because that drives the financial health of this organization. So you can see on the left there, the independent living occupancy chart for the year. The red line is the budget, kind of varies slightly month to month, but pretty much averages 97% for the year. And the blue bars are independent living occupancy by month. And that averages 95% for the year. So we're slightly under budget for the year. And that under budget really equates to about 6 vacant apartments. So we have 6 more vacant apartments than we budgeted every month on average. So that's what and you can see there that that trend is a slight downward trend because it took us a few months to figure out how to get new residents to move in with the pandemic going on. and then also how to market the apartments when we couldn't do those on-site tours. So, we're figuring that out, and you can see we made some progress in the third quarter. July particularly had a good number of residents move in. Overall, independent living revenue is $197,000 under budget, and that represents 2% of our independent living budgeted revenue. So in the third quarter, we welcomed 9 new resident households, which is great because in the first 2 quarters, we only had 4 new resident households move in. So we're up to 13 for the year. Typically, we see turnover of around 30 to 35 new residents in any given year. And this year, we're going to be lucky if we can hit 20. We have 13 now. We have a couple in the pipeline, but I'm not sure we're going to quite get to that 20, but we'll be lucky if we get there. And of course, this impacts our entrance fees received. Entrance fees help us fund the capital improvement projects that we see, the Fireside Lounge, and all of those other projects that Eli mentioned earlier. But while we are not concerned about overall cash being available to us to run the organization and operations on a day-to-day basis, it does point out the importance of our net operating margin. So typically, having a net operating margin translates to cash in the bank, and so that margin helps us weather storms like we are seeing right now, 2020, and potentially into 2021 as well. But we do have sufficient cash resources to support the operation, so we're not concerned about that, but it does, again, point out the importance of maintaining that margin. On the right side of the slide there, you can see supported living occupancy took a pretty good hit this year. We started off the year very strong. March and April hit, we had that slide. Again, we were trying to figure out how to get folks moving through to supported living. We figured that out in April, and you can see that incline up until July. And then of course we had some residents leave us in August and September. So overall we had 29 new residents move into supported living this year. That includes both permanent moves and temporary stays. And then we had 36 residents move out either by death or moving back to their independent living apartment. So we're still trying to gain some ground there. Supported living revenues are under budget by $252,000, and that's about 4% of their overall budget. And we know that the apartment fee, if you're familiar with the way supported living is billed, we have a monthly fee and a care level fee. And the monthly fee typically is more sensitive to occupancy, so that is farther under budget than the care level. Care level is more need-based, and that typically is higher than what we budget. We are also continuing to see an under budget on reduced rate day credits and resident assistance credits. So resident assistance right now is having a little bit of a reprieve. We only have 7 residents on the program right now. But of course, we realize that that's a temporary reprieve and that we will see that number go up again in the future. The third largest area for our revenue source is dining services. So we hope you have enjoyed some of those offerings that Sarah had talked about, the happy hours and barbecues. And I know that they're looking at how they can extend those into the colder months. I know that's maybe not sound very appealing, but hopefully you'll find a way to get outside and do some of those fun activities. We know it's not the same as dining in the dining room, and our dining services revenue reflects that. So dining services is 19% below budget, or $264,000 for the year. In my last update, I promised that I would look at the choice dining program, and I made some changes. We reduced the monthly choice dining fee to $75 per person through the end of the year. So I'm hoping that all of you are taking advantage of that so that you can spend down those balances that had built up over the year. You may recall earlier this year, we had suspended any forfeitures for 2020, but those will start again in January. And so all of you will have a forfeiture date in the first 6 months of the year because we are on a semi-annual forfeiture schedule. So you will be prepared, hopefully, to use those funds before you get there, or be prepared to forfeit them at that time. I often get asked the question, can I donate my choice dining balance? And there are a couple things you can do. We'd rather have you use your dollars than to forfeit them. But if you have a balance and you want to use that up, you are welcome to use our catering department. Maybe you have some pans of lasagna prepared and you could take that down to a homeless shelter, or you could even give it to your son or daughter to come pick up and they can take it home and enjoy it. there's other ways to use your dollars, and you can be creative. Like I said, we want you to use it and not necessarily forfeit it. But if you do end up with a balance and you forfeit that balance, we want you to know that those dollars are going to support the dining services program. It is expensive to operate dining services on site, and the cost of carry to Horizon House is over $1 million annually. So any business that you can give to the dining services helps offset that cost to carry. And as a 501c3 organization, as a charity, every part of this organization requires funding. Dining services is no exception. I watched a video yesterday, I believe. It was a group of residents that showed prospective residents what it was like to live in Horizon House during the pandemic. And one of the themes that I heard was that residents were very appreciative of the dining services that were on site available to them at any time. And they can imagine that if they were living out of a Horizon House in a previous house or condo, that when restaurants closed down, that they would have to navigate going to the grocery store, they'd have to prepare all their meals, and the residents were just thankful that they had that opportunity to have dining services available to them here. And I hope all of you can appreciate the value of having that service on site and feel good about using your dollars to support that program. Beth, do you have that final slide? Here we go. Okay. So you can see here's just a snapshot of the quarter end financial summary, total operating revenue of 18 million against a budget of 19. And so we're under budget on revenue, $969,000. On the expense side, $16.4 million expenses versus a budget of 17.6. So that's $1.2 million under budget for the period, for the year. And again, that 9% net operating margin. So in our expenses, we're seeing labor, about 68% of that positive variance is related to labor. And the other third of that comes from the non-labor costs. So as expected, there are some areas within the budget that are over budget. And that's because we've purchased a lot of supplies, minor equipment to help keep people, staff, residents safe from COVID. That's, air filters, equipment to monitor airflow, the visitation center outside, and then of course, looking at other ways to open up other spaces outdoors for residents. And of course, there's always some items that we didn't spend this year. We didn't spend as much in recruitment. We didn't spend as much in legal fees, conference fees, management training. And there's some areas in IT where we just had some projects, software implementation projects planned that just didn't materialize. So some positive and negative variances there in operating, but overall we are under budget on expenses.
Christy, I'll just add a little bit of comment in here and to say that a lot of communities are going to be struggling during this COVID time, and it's more challenging for them to manage their budget, whether it's the revenue or the expense side. And it is critically important that we have a certain margin in order to make sure that we have access to debt when it comes time to do the improvements we want around here for the parts that aren't covered by the entrance fees. So I really want to do a shout out to an entire team here and their ability to manage the expenses without disadvantage any of the employees. We have not had to resort to any kind of layoffs. We've adjusted shifts based on what the demand is, which is a normal process, but we have retained our employee base and we've tried to maintain our services at levels that you as residents would appreciate and still be able to have the financial performance that ensures that we have longevity. We are among a very few number of communities around the country with this kind of strength, and it doesn't happen by accident. It happens by great teamwork by residents who appreciate what we're trying to accomplish and staff who are managing their budgets really well. So thank you all.
Lastly, thank you, Mike. Lastly, I just wanted to give you an update. I mentioned last time that we had taken a payroll protection program loan that was part of the CARES Act that was enacted earlier this year. And we have applied for forgiveness for that loan, and we expect to hear back sometime in the fourth quarter, or at least before we close the books on 2020. We do expect to have 100% forgiveness of this loan, which was $1.8 million. And those loan proceeds were used to cover payroll expenses, cover PPE costs, and some debt interest payment that was required in an 8-week period that we used those funds up. So, the purpose was to help businesses keep their employees employed and keep them safe. And that's what we use those funds for.
And so that people understand too, that our operating margin that Christy was pointing out, that 9%, that doesn't include anything that we received from on loans. So that is unrelated to it. So the management of those expenses is independent of having received additional funds. So we have received additional funds. Hopefully they will be forgiven. And those are truly dedicated towards maintaining staff and the various PPE that we need throughout this year and probably well into next.
That's right. So our net operating margin that we talk about, we try to keep that with the most controllable things that we can control, right? So revenue that we control, expenses that we control, and we try to keep anything that's sort of outside of that, out of that number, so that we can really see how the operations are performing. I also wanted to mention that we received some funds from the Department of Health and Human Services that was specific to healthcare providers. We received $180,000 of provider relief funds, and the purpose of these funds is to cover the COVID expenses that we may incur. So these can cover expenses that we incur in 2020, but we can also use the funds that can carry over into 2021 for the first 6 months. Okay, so that is all I have. And I will now turn it over to Brian Levitt and Laura to talk about the K4 Connect program.
Thank you, Christy. This is Laura Tufts, and Brian Levitt is joining me as well. We wanted to share some updates with everyone about the communications program, and wanted to mention that I recently celebrated my 1-year anniversary here at Horizon House, and what an incredible first year it has been. Definitely not one that I will forget anytime soon. And I think one of the things that COVID really illuminated for all of us was that we need to be able to communicate with all of our residents quickly and get information to all of you about some really critical things. The other thing I've learned is that, of course, you also want information and need information sort of delivered consistently across our communication platforms about events or notices or services that we have available, or just community news, in addition to those really critical emergency needs to get information out to all of you. So we're both working with the systems that we have that we know can deliver information quickly. So a voicemail blast that the front desk helps us with often can very quickly get information out to all of you that you need or that we want to get to you ASAP. The info line is something else that was introduced this year, and that is just by calling extension 3200, you can get information, and anytime we have anything critical to get to you, that information is available on that line. So really, in order to, as we started digging into a lot of this, to create a systemized approach to communications, it really required both IT and the communications department to work closely together to both stabilize and update some of our systems and upgrade if needed. And so we want to share a little bit more about what's happening with all of that work. So I will turn it over to Brian Levitt.
Okay, hello everyone. So as Laura mentioned, we found we do have a lot of systems and different ways to communicate. And I think one of the things we really learned was it was very difficult for us to control that the same thing was on every different platform. So it was, I think, frustrating to people if we had information on a printed document different than something that was on HH Connect, that was different than something that we were putting somewhere else. So it led us to really examine how can we better and more efficiently communicate the right information to people at the right time. And I had been looking at a company called K4 Connect that I was speaking with last year at the Leading Age Conference. And through our association with them, we were given the opportunity to try these little Alexa dots, which you may have seen. around the community. And as we looked into that, we really were investigating how their platform works and would really help us to communicate efficiently and effectively the same message, regardless of how people want to see it, whether it's on HHTV or through these little Alexa dots, or perhaps later on where we can use an app or other features, or maybe even have the sign in the mailroom work right, which is kind of a fun thing for us. So so we're partnered with K4, and we're really looking forward to using their technology to really help us improve and meet the goal of communicating consistently with everyone. So while we've been testing the Echo Dots, the thing that we're going to see next is going to be an upgrade to HHTV. We've had a lot of struggles with our existing platform that runs HHTV. The DVD player broke, which was quite old and took several months for them to ship us a replacement. We know the picture quality isn't as good because of the way it connects to the cable system. We had some struggles with Comcast on that. So we've been able to partner with K4 and really leverage their expertise to put in a new system that will address a lot of the issues that we've seen with it. We should see, for one thing, a better quality picture. It should be an HD quality picture that's coming through. It still allows us to schedule DVDs and live events like this the way they are, but it will also be able to let us show information when there isn't a program going that will be the same as on any digital sign we might happen to see around the community, like the one in the mailroom. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to maintain one source and then display the information there. So that's going to be kind of a big, exciting change for us. We are waiting on one part that is back ordered. They don't have a date for the part to come in yet. It's kind of the most important part because it's what connects us to the Comcast cable system. So we're waiting on that. But once I have a date on that delivery, we will have the tech out here to install the system, and you should see a nice change in that. The only other thing I'll say about that, it will remain on channel 370. You won't have to find it any different place, but it will look better for us. I also wanted to talk about HH Connect as it fits in with this whole communication platform. HH Connect was built, I guess, a couple years before, or a year before I started here. So I wasn't involved or had a very deep dive into it, which I've now taken a fairly deep dive to look at it. And we're looking at, well, how do we stabilize it? The platform was built, but it was never really maintained for a while. So we're fixing the software in the background to make it work a little bit better. We're trying to look at different ways we can reorganize the information and content so you can see what's relevant to you. There are some features for interactivity like messaging that we're exploring how maybe we can turn on and people could enjoy connecting with each other, or maybe even discussing or having discussions through the site. And then we're also looking at a change in the theme or how the site looks to make sure it works really well, whether you're looking at it on a computer or on a mobile phone or on your tablet. So you get a really good experience using it wherever you're using it. And we're hoping to be able to evolve the site rather than just kind of leave it and sit there. So we'll be looking for feedback as we develop this and move it along. So I think that was all we had on HH Connect. I think Laura was going to tell us about printed communications now, since
Yeah, just wanted to, of course, mention as well that we know that printed communication is important to all of you, and the elevator signs, of the alert, our weekly COVID communication, the directory, those will remain in print. I know there have been a lot of questions about that, so did want to mention that. And Brian, one additional thing that I forgot to mention that I think has really helped us ensure that information is consistent across platforms is that the front desk team has taken on the role of making sure the content that's going into the system is up to date and fresh. So the team is all trained to do that and to really help provide that consistency. And we've seen some really great improvements because of that work. So hats off to that group and their willingness to take that on and to learn some new tools. And I'm really excited that they're as eager as they are to learn more as we roll a few more of these things out.
Great. And then to finish up, I just wanted to talk about our good friend Alexa, who we've all seen. So during at the start of the pandemic, Amazon was looking for some companies to partner with, and they donated these devices to a number of senior living communities to work with the K4 company that we've been working with. So we were fortunate enough to get pretty much one for every apartment for anyone who wants one. And we're working with the K4 platform to connect it with our calendar, we can use it to have notices. You can use it to check if the mail has arrived. We pre-programmed it with some phone numbers so you can call the front desk, you can call the salon, the valet. And then you can also use it for other things you would normally do with one of these devices, like listen to music or a podcast, find out the news, do fun things like get the latest updates on the election. So they're really useful devices. We've put some around the community for people to try out. We have about, I believe, 100 people who have signed up for these. If you would like one, you can just either let the front desk know, or you can call 2703 and we'll have one set up for you at the front desk. And I'll just give a quick demo of using Alexa to find out daily events. So we would say, Alexa, open K4. And she would decide not to cooperate at this very minute because I'm live. Alexa, open K4.
Welcome to Horizon House.
What are today's events?
Documentary, Ken Burns, A Masterpiece by Midnight, 2001, takes place today at 1 p.m. in the HHTV. Exercise with Brian takes place today at 3:15 p.m. in the HHTV. Friday Night Art Film, A Ghost Story, 2017, takes place today at 7:30 p.m. in the HHTV. You can say, replay events, or stop.
Okay, that's just a little sample. We've created some new handouts what we'll be doing with these, and Laura has been great at sending a weekly email to people that have signed up to use these with some hints and other fun things you can do with them. So again, if you're interested in having one, please stop by the front desk or call 2703. And I believe we'll next hear from Marianne Anderson with an update on the Residents' Council.
Thank you, Brian. I can report to you that the your council is strong. Committee members have learned how to Zoom, and interesting and entertaining programs have been resumed, often on HHTV. Other committee tasks are carried out in more innovative ways, and market sales are good. And the residents, you all, have voted in 5 terrific new council members. They have a big job ahead of them. But at this time of year, the council focus shifts because each year our residents, you, honor and celebrate the dedicated members of Horizon House staff with a contribution to the Employee Recognition Fund. One thing I've heard a lot about this year, and actually during this time, is empathy. Empathy is all about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and trying to see the world from their perspective. And we've seen it in countless ways this year, from the people who work at Horizon House and empathy with each other. Empathy is a core value of Horizon House community. And as we think about the challenges that we have all faced this year, as well as the many blessings in our lives, I ask you all to consider making a generous gift to the Employee Recognition Fund. No matter the amount, the fact that you give is important. Remember, every cent you give goes to employees. And many thanks to all of you who have already contributed. Now, unfortunately, there won't be a holiday party for residents and staff this year. But on the afternoons of December 9th and 10th, Anderson Hall, if Eli allows, Anderson Hall will be decorated. Music will play and the popcorn machine will pop as employees pick up their ERF checks that you have made possible. Details about contributing to the Employee Recognition Fund are in the alert, and I won't go into detail now, but I do want to introduce to you our Horizon House board president, who is also a Horizon House resident, Anne Brand.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to have an opportunity to just say a very brief hello from the Board of Trustees and highlight just two activities in which we are immersed. I know that you've heard from Mike about the Strategic Planning Committee, which before COVID had a trajectory that was pretty clear. And after COVID, we got creative and created another trajectory, which takes us into Zoom meetings about twice a month, facilitated by a terrific guy who's worked with us before named Brian Frederick. There are 5 trustees and 3 staff that meet with Ryan on a regular basis. And what I want to stress with you is a discovery that just reinforces why I am here, why you are here, and what makes this community work as well as it does. In the course of our early discussions, we were tasked with identifying the most important attributes about this community that are to be saved at all costs and preserved and promoted. And without exception, everybody on that committee, as well as all the members of the board, concur that the resident engagement and resident-driven nature of this community is precious. And our deliberations are being shaped by the determination to assure that that quality of this community not only will thrive, but will grow and become stronger each year that passes, and will be protected on into the future. It isn't going to be easy, as I'm sure you know what the pressures are, but it's well worth the effort that it takes to make it happen. The second piece that I wanted to report is that we have 2 people whose terms of office would expire this year in the end of December. They are resident Bob Klein, who has been on the board for 9 + 2 years, actually, has been treasurer of the board and has given heroic service to us. He will be going off the board and one of the resident trustees. And we have a non-resident trustee retiring. Some of you know him well, Julius DeBrow. So the governance committee of the board is hard at work in the recruitment process to identify new trustees who will take their place. We expect to finish that work probably, certainly by the end of December, and we'll be able to announce it perhaps even in the month of November. We'll have to wait to see. But anyway, that's what we're doing. And I bring you greetings from the board and thanks for how well you are responding to this pandemic. And just let you know, we're all part of it with you together. Thank you.
Good morning. It's good to be with all of you again. I'm going to be giving you a few brief updates. I'm going to be talking about a new position I'm very excited to bring to the Horizon House community, Care Connector. I'm also going to work in kind of a last minute update on the Virginia Mason situation with the merge. I know there have been some questions from some of you on that. And I'll update you on the flu as well as a few brief mentions related to COVID-19. On the Care Connector, we have recognized for some time now that we have essentially a gap in being able to support many of you who are looking for responses to questions about care support, about options when perhaps you are a spouse caring for a loved one who has some changes in their physical or cognitive health. And it's unclear where you go to seek that support and to get some questions answered. Some of you have contacted me, some have contacted Linda Purdy, some of you seek out the clinic for support, and some of you have even gone to marketing associates because you have had a relationship with Valerie or Christian when you may need support later on in your time here at Horizon House. And so I'm very excited to share that we have created a new position that we are calling Care Connector. This is going to be a Master's of Social Work. I know some of you have approached me about a desire to have a social worker available to you in independent living. And so this position will be assumed by a future candidate with an MSW, Master of Social Work. And this individual will partner with those of you and family members to talk through what may be some solutions to ensure you are living at your most optimal well-being and in the best health possible. This individual will also be a firm handshake for those residents who feel that supported living might be a better option. And that is also another area that's been unclear. Where do I go when I have some questions about supported living? So the Care Connector will be someone to seek when you have questions or begin to ponder, is supported living an option I should consider? And so the Care Connector will help to accompany a resident making that decision, whether it's a temporary stay in supported living or a permanent transition. I will look to the Care Connector to join you on that journey so it is a seamless process, as seamless as possible for that transition, which is already not an easy transition, I certainly recognize. So we are underway with recruitment for this position. It is a budgeted position out of the operational budget. And we are going to be defining more clearly once this person joins our team, what some of those parameters will be in terms of the reach of that support. So for beginning, there will not be any fee for service, if you will. This will be simply another resource for you. If residents have needs that extend beyond the parameters of the program, then the Care Connector would be working closely with the resident to engage an outside partner such as a care management firm. We work closely with some care management firms who are more specialized in certain areas. And so that would be a discussion that would take place between the Care Connector and resident. So you will be seeing a memo that describes in more detail this position. It will be available in your boxes sometime later today. I certainly will keep you all apprised as we realize a new team member in this role. Again, recruitment has started. Still figuring out details of where this person will be located. I'm very sensitive to desires for privacy and confidentiality, and so I want to be thoughtful about where we find an office location for this team member. So stay tuned. A memo will be coming in your boxes with more detail, and I will also be participating in the small resident group discussions next week on November 3rd and 4th, and we'll be happy to answer more questions then, or you're welcome to reach out to me if you'd like to have more conversation. So excited to bring that to you. Wanted to update you on Virginia Mason. I know many of you, including myself, are Virginia Mason users and patients, and there has been some concern, legitimate concern, about what the merge of Virginia Mason with CHI Franciscan will mean for those of you, myself, should we want to exercise our right under death with dignity. As you all are aware, with the Catholic affiliation coming on the scene with that merge, they are not, as an institution, ones who can participate directly in death with dignity. In August, I reached out to Dr. Gary Kaplan, the medical director CEO of Virginia Mason, to explore this and to understand what will this mean for patients and consumers of Virginia Mason to exercise their right. And Dr. Kaplan had this to say. I do want to share this with you. I just need to switch over to some readers. I let him know that we're gravely concerned about what this will mean for those of us who may choose to exercise our right. And he responded that what we know now, this was again back in August, some services related to physician-assisted death would no longer be provided at Virginia Mason. All other end-of-life and palliative care services would continue across the healthcare system. Virginia Mason would continue to adhere to each patient's wishes as expressed in advance directives, including any do not resuscitate orders. The bottom line is that we will ensure our patients' needs are met and find them resources if we don't provide a service. I responded back to Dr. Kaplan and let him know it will be critical that the physicians are equipped with resources to expediently refer patients and connect them with other resources of physicians who can and are authorized to participate in working with patients to go through the steps that are required under the law to exercise that right. He again reiterated to me that it is their every intention to continue providing comprehensive end-of-life care, and they will be finding a way to make death with dignity easily accessible. Those of you who are consumers of Virginia Mason would have received a letter directly from Virginia Mason. I did as well. And in that letter, it also referenced death with dignity and that they would ensure resources are available. I did let Dr. Kaplan know that he can anticipate this may lead to the departure of some patients from the system in light of this merge. And he wants to emphasize again that they are making all the resources available for those patients exercising their right. So I will certainly keep you posted as I learn any more information, and please let me know as well if any of you are hearing of updates from providers whom you're working with. Please let me know so that we can continue communicating to the community as a whole on this issue. Switching over to the flu, I want to thank all of you who have participated in getting your flu shot, as well as staff members. Very, very critical to get that done. It's always important to do that because of the statistics of how influenza affects us, especially as we get older. But it's even more important this year because of, in addition to keeping ourselves safe and healthy, we want to do our part to also help not to avoid, we want to avoid overwhelming healthcare system so that we can preserve those beds for those with COVID. I want to share some data. We've been able to collect some recent update after the last flu shot event that was held on the 28th. And to date, we have a total number of residents who have obtained their flu shot is 326 out of 515. That is what we know. That translates to a 63% participation rate. The clinic and I are confident that more of you have obtained the flu shot. We just haven't heard from you yet. And you may be interested in knowing the breakdown of that is 271 independent living residents and 55 supported living residents have obtained the flu shots, again, that we're aware of. On the employee side, this is a combination of Horizon House and Morrison employees. We have had 192 out of 257 employees receive the flu shots, or 75%. And I want to emphasize that for those of you who we have not heard from yet about receiving your flu shot, I did place a memo and a flu survey in your boxes yesterday. And I please ask for you to return your survey. They can be returned in the mail room. So you head directly into the mail room. The second to the last secured box where the bright spot cards can go is temporarily being used for those flu surveys. So please return your flu surveys. We just simply want to know if you've received them. If you have not received your flu shot yet, but would like some assistance, let us know that. We will make every effort. And we also can look to bring Bartell's drugs back for another flu shot event if there's enough interest and enough of you who don't have plans yet to get a flu shot. So keep us posted and we will make sure to set that up for you. I also want to emphasize that I prepared a memo and sent out last week so that all of our contract partners get their flu shots. We're making this mandatory for them in order to continue conducting business and services here. So that are the home care workers, that would be PO Tech representatives, construction workers. So the staff liaisons to all of our business partners have forwarded the memo, shared reminders about the flu shot requirement, as well as some general reminders about COVID-19, as well as behaviors we expect them to be demonstrating while they're here, certainly on site, but as well as when they are outside of Horizon House to avoid bringing that virus back into our community. So I want to emphasize that that communication has gone out to all of our business partners. And speaking of COVID, I'll wrap up with a few remarks on COVID. The outdoor space that has been set up for residents to enjoy visits with family members outside the library on Cherry. Certainly recognize that the inclement weather is here, the temperatures have dropped. I want to emphasize, as I've shared in the past, that I have been participating in weekly calls with state agencies, that's Department of Health, Department of Social and Health Services, King County Public Health, Leading Age. As providers, we have been flooding their inboxes with requests for updated guidance on how we can improve the quality of those outdoor spaces to bring in warmth and better coverage with regards to the rain and colder temperatures. They've been a little slow to move on this, and here we are almost in November. The state has reconvened the stakeholder groups that met last summer to develop what is now known as a Safe Start for Long-Term Care Plan. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And the stakeholder groups are planning to develop updated guidance recommendations. The timeline now is for that updated guidance to go forward to Governor Inslee and his office by November 13th. And from there, we should be shortly after that time receiving updated guidance. When I mean updated guidance, when I say that, things that would seem so not complicated to us are complicated from a regulatory code perspective. So for example, heat lamps. Many are bringing in heat lamps for outdoor spaces. The state has been very clear that they have to consult with other experts, including the Fire Marshal Office, to understand if heat lamps with propane gives off too much carbon dioxide. They also have to understand that heat lamps that are electrical are the electrical outlets and facilities equipped to handle that type of device or piece of equipment. So nothing is usually ever easy with the state. There is even some discussion about if garage spaces can be considered, and there's concern again about the carbon levels that may be emitted in garage spaces. So a lot that they're sorting through to be able to provide us with updated guidance, and hopefully we'll have that before winter's over and can start creating some better space for those visits. The state was very clear that we should not be conducting indoor visits at this time, recognizing that it is colder. And for that, if we do have to cancel visits, we will be re-emphasizing FaceTime and helping to support residents, certainly in supported living with technology use. So stay posted on that, and we'll hopefully be able to soon bring improvements for some additional comfort. In terms of the Safe Start, I apologize for any confusion that arose out of the communication a couple of weeks ago where phase 1 was referenced of the Safe Start plan. There was some feedback that came in with confusion about, are we in phase 2, are we in phase 1? Completely legitimate. There's a lot of information out there. I want to remind everyone, it's been a few months, that the Governor Inslee's plan that he put forth for the state is the state plan that has 4 phases. And those are the phases that each county must operate under. And there's a host of activities that are associated with each of those phases. Later in the summer, the state came forward with a separate Safe Start plan that is specific to long-term care facilities. It too has 4 phases and somewhat mirrors the governor's statewide 4-phase plan approach. There are some similar type of activities in the Safe Start plan specific to long-term care. That includes things like dining operations, activities, visitation, and the Safe Start plan. The facilities within the counties must meet certain metrics in order to advance to the next phase of the Safe Start plan. Facilities cannot advance to a future phase beyond what phase the county is in. King County is in phase 2 at this time, so therefore facilities in King County could not advance beyond phase 2. The metrics that must be met by facilities under the Safe Start plan include things such as the transmission rate in the county, PPE availability within the facility, staff resources in the facility, disinfecting supplies, cases must be 28 days from the last known case in the facility as one of those metrics. We had arrived to phase 2 for a little while under the Safe Start plan because the King County transmission rate had dropped. Unfortunately, that transmission rate has really climbed, and just in the last couple of days, it has gone from 100 per 100,000 cases to 104. So it's shifting upward and not going in the direction we want to see. So with the phase 2, the metric must be 75 per 100,000 cases or less. So therefore, for the Safe Start plan, we have had to return to phase 1. What that means for us is that means residents continue largely dining and supported living in their apartments. It means that we can't do much in the way of group activities within supported living. And we are adhering to a more conservative approach anyway, because of the fact that we're in the flu season. So we had very little change that impacted us as we had to shift back from phase 2 to phase 1. So I wanted to just offer some clarity around that and emphasize that there are 2-phase plans we must operate within the Safe Start plan for the county. So if you have any other questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I also want to remind, as my final closing remark, as has been mentioned, fatigue, recognize that. However, we cannot lose our vigilance and due diligence with wearing masks at all times when out of apartments. As I was just mentioning earlier, the transmission rate in King County is going up. And so it is imperative when you are in social settings outside of your apartments, whether you're sitting and congregating with friends in the lobby or entrance to the West Wing, it is imperative that you must remain in mask at all times. We're getting reports that there is continuation of some dropping their mask down as you're engaging in conversations. It's easy to do. As a lip reader myself, it is difficult to hear and lip read. We have to keep our mask on. So please, even in social settings, those masks must remain on. You maybe have seen it's the last minute, but we're trying to leverage the good weather we still have. And so there is a happy hour being featured tomorrow out on the patio. We've had some challenges with the happy hours and too many people coming out on the patios and people pulling chairs together, and food and drink will be involved. Masks will be down in that outdoor environment, but it is even more imperative as a result that you be socially distanced. I would encourage you to be mindful of your time so that others can come through and enjoy that as well over the 2-hour span. And please don't pull chairs closer. I empower all of us to reach out and remind each other, staff, residents, both ways, to empower each other, to remind us to keep those masks on, back up, ask everyone to please keep socially distanced. So we're in this together. The collaboration has been phenomenal between residents and staff. I want to acknowledge as well the Wellness Committee, who I've been collaborating with on the flu campaign, especially Ann Kelly and Dr. A. Bergman. It's just a great collaboration all around to ensure we're all doing the right things and the best we can to keep the virus and the flu out of our community. So with that, I am going to turn this over to George, who's going to share some more in-depth information on COVID-19. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Laurie. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I come to you with some comments as a member of the Health Advisory Group, as well as a member of the administration's COVID task force. The task force is under pressure to loosen requirements for two main reasons. One is the fact that we have not had any COVID cases in a long time. We haven't had a case among residents since early April. The second reason is that it's the holiday season. And this is the time when ordinarily there would be more social gathering, more visits with family and friends. So the question comes up, how does the task force make its decisions about what measures to allow? What criteria are used? These are on this first slide. There are 4 criteria for making the decision as to what should be followed. One is the amount of COVID among residents. And as I just said, fortunately, we have not had a case since April. The second includes recommendations from various agencies. And Laura just discussed all those various agencies whose advice we take into consideration. The third is the amount of coronavirus in the community in King County. And finally, and very importantly, how strongly residents comply with the guidelines that are in existence. So these are the criteria that all come together and drives the task force decisions. In the interest of time, I will skip any comments about the guidelines. Let me talk about the impact of increased coronavirus in King counties. Clearly, it is getting worse. And this equals an increased risk to Horizon House residents. Just today's King 5 News had a report about a healthcare worker in a facility here in the King County area that picked up the virus in the community, was asymptomatic, brought it into the care facility where over 15 residents and staff got COVID and 7 died. This just illustrates the potential. It increases the chance that someone, a staff member, an essential worker, or a resident in the community will find an unsafe situation and pick up coronavirus. The residents could be going to the grocery store, to medical or dental appointments, wherever, and end up in a non-safe situation and pick up the virus and bring it back into Horizon House. Basically, we are only 2 cases of COVID from strict quarantine. If a resident were to develop COVID, we would, of course, isolate the resident and do contact tracing. We would work with the county, who would do contact tracing for persons outside of Horizon House. If a second resident developed COVID, this would mean, of course, intra-community spread within our institution. And we would immediately be under strict quarantine with all activities and events canceled. This would last for at least 10 to 14 days. So that's the threat to us. We are in a bad period with this pandemic. Cases are increasing. People are predicting that it may end up worse than it was in the spring. Cases are going up in Washington state, nationally, and even globally. Today's Wall Street Journal has an article saying that there has been a 46% increase in COVID hospitalizations since October 1st. Of course, because of improvements in healthcare, the medical community is to save more patients who are hospitalized with COVID than before. But it's still a major problem. Could I have this last slide? The Hague message then is hunker down, stay the course. There may well be several months of increased risk of COVID, perhaps longer. The task force will be continually reviewing safe activities that we can put on for our residents here, both during the holiday season and beyond. But it will all be done under one mantra, which is the goal of all of us, the administration's task force, the health advisory group, is to minimize the risk of COVID for Horizon House residents. There is a lot of talk about vaccines, and we presented a couple of programs here to learn about vaccine studies which are being done in the Seattle-King County area. There are several vaccines which are in clinical trials. I hope that the vaccines work, that is, that they generate antibodies, and I hope that these will be protective. And I'm delighted to see that we, the elderly, will be among the priority groups to receive these vaccines in the United States. The elderly, medical personnel, and first responders are the first priority. But in all reality, I think it is highly likely that it will be well over into the first quarter of next year before we at Horizon House can expect to see any availability of a vaccine. So we are heading into difficult times, my friend, and as Laurie just said, we must continue to do everything we can to minimize the risk of COVID. Feel free to contact any member of the Health Advisory Group if you have questions or comment. Thank you, and I'd like to turn it over to Mike Ostrom.
Thank you, George. Those are sobering comments that that we need to listen to and respond to, and I think for the most part we really do well around here. So thank you all for hearing the message again. We do repeat these things because it's just easy to rationalize maybe just slipping a little bit, and we're just very, very concerned that this would be a virus that could get into our community and wreak havoc, and we just really don't want that. That'd be a big downer. Thank you for all of the participants who, they do a lot of hard work here to come up with the message that they want to share with you in these chats, and I hope that you find them helpful and informative, and know that you can contact each individual with any questions or details that you might want to cover after this presentation. We'll have a little bit of time for questions and later at the end of this, but feel free afterwards to contact anyone for whom you would like to have some more information. Everyone puts a lot of effort into it and does a great job. I have a couple of things, and first I just want to make a comment on that Care Connector program that Lori was describing. This is something that she and I talked about for the better part of a year, and recognizing a need to make sure that we're able to work with independent living residents to provide the opportunity to connect up with the resources that will help make independent living be a better experience, and to reduce the anxiety behind some of the care requirements that might evolve over time. So we're really excited about bringing this, that will start as an individual and ultimately be blended with a team of providers within our community. And we hope it'll be a very successful program and give every independent living resident greater comfort and confidence in how we can facilitate their aging process and the issues that arise through that journey. I hope the slide deck can come back up. I'm sorry that we didn't get George's last slide in there, but I will keep going forward, and I'm sure someone behind the scene is trying to get our slide deck up and running. Last week we had the past presidents event, and this is the represented over 30 years of presidents of the Residence Council and or the Board of Trustees, and it is it's a hallmark of Horizon House. I don't think there is a community around that would have this kind of a program that would be so consistently put together. Neil McReynolds manages it, and it is a testimony to the commitment that past presidents have and their feelings about Horizon House. And I also think it also represents a key attribute of our resident-driven community, because many of those people on that emeritus group are either former residents, former board presidents who have become residents. In fact, 8 former presidents have become residents. And that says a lot about what their commitment was to Horizon House, that they wanted to move in. It was a lot of fun. We shared a lot of the issues that we face within the industry, within Horizon House in particular. And we did, talk a fair amount about, what COVID means, how we're handling it, so we could give confidence to people who share the interest in Horizon House that we are doing our very best to manage in a difficult time. I want to remind everyone that you should have received your resident satisfaction survey. It is mailed to you from the United States Post Office. Is a third-party survey, so we don't see and know who is commenting on what. And we'd like for that to be returned on November 6th. And it is really important that you fill it out, and most people are very good about that. We do take it seriously, and there are times when we want to be acknowledged for the good work we do, and we also want to be called out for those things that we should improve. Our job is to listen and to try to improve where we can, explain confidently what we might not be able to do that might be preferred, but be very clear in our transparent in our communication, but always working towards improving what we do here. Also, we have some small group sessions coming up on Tuesday, November 3rd from 9 to 11 a.m. and also on Wednesday, November 4th, 1 to 3 p.m. Those will be a Zoom or a call in. Go ahead and contact Beth, email or call, leave a message for her so she can get you in that queue. This is our chance to have a little bit more conversation, and I've heard from residents that maybe doing a presentation is not as helpful as being available to ask questions on a whole host of topics. So while we do have a couple of things we want to cover, the Care Connector program, a little more detail of that, also a little bit more on technology update, we will leave time for questions so that we are not overly repetitive. I did explain to a resident that there is a reason that we're repetitive, in that not everyone uses a single channel of communication, so we want to make sure that we reach people, but we will leave time for questions. And Lori mentioned, and I'll just emphasize again, that we've got a Halloween happy hour coming up tomorrow between 2 and 4 on the B1 Parkview Terrace. Everybody, we want you to enjoy and have fun and have a few yucks and some beverage and bundle up and keep your social distancing. We want to balance our approach to having fun and being safe so that we can do everything we can to make the isolation that we experience not as cumbersome and distressing as it sometimes can be. We also have a kind of a Halloween photo opportunity. So if you want to stop by the right outside the bistro, or the bistro from 10 to 2 today, we'll be taking photos of people with our setup there that was done by a number of our staff, and some terrific pumpkin carving. I am reminded that I have zero talent when I see the work that is done by our staff and the creativity. And if you had a chance to see the Monster Mash a video that Brian Carr put on, I played a bit part in that and was encouraged to keep my day job, and I totally understand why, but it was really creative and well done with residents and staff. Again, part of the fun we want to keep having, notwithstanding the environment, the COVID environment we face. Retirement Community Week, we did it. It may not have been exactly how it was in the past, but I think there was great effort by staff to make it a fun event, to make it something that represented our diversity, to have some good food, good costumes, and a lot of enthusiasm by staff to be able to celebrate the work they do here at Horizon House on behalf of all our residents. Of course, the talent show, that was the one I was referencing. I think that was a part of our retirement week. Again, the talent we have here and the opportunity to showcase it is really a rich experience and what makes being at Horizon House a lot of fun. This just isn't a day job for folks. This is a part of people's life. They take it seriously as you take it seriously, and we're glad to keep doing fun things that make it an enjoyable place to be. We have our next Fireside Chat, which is a November and December combination, which will be Friday, December 4th at 10 a.m. And like I said, usually I get to this point and I think, gosh, what could we possibly have to say for next month? But you saw what we had to say today. So a lot of good material, and I expect we'll have a lot of good material by the time we get to December 4th. So with that, I would like to open it up for our question and answer period, and make sure that all of us are available to answer any questions you might have about the material or other things that are on your mind. So Risa or Beth, are you able to let people in who have questions via chat and or recite what they might have emailed to Beth?
If someone has a question, please raise their hand. I will allow you to talk and we can start that way. You have a question from Nancy Federici. Please unmute yourself.
Just going to comment that you've had 2 hours of very, very fine, vital information for all of us. Thank you for taking the time to put together a terrific program today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nancy.
You can also type a question into the Q&A box if you would prefer to do that.
This might prove to be a little bit of an awkward way to address questions, but we are certainly available afterwards one-on-one. So this isn't the last chance Texaco. So if you don't have questions, that's okay. We'll make ourselves available on whatever basis is helpful. Beth, do you have anyone who's emailed any questions into you?
Beth had to step aside, but she is monitoring her email to forward to me. This is Brian, and I have not seen any because she would send them to me if she got any, and none have come through yet.
Okay. Okay, it looks like maybe there are no questions to be asked for right now. So unless something sneaks in here at the last minute, I just want to thank everyone for participating, both the presenters as well as residents who were participating live and those who will be watching this a little bit later. These are important sessions, and I hope it was, as Nancy said, as informative and beneficial as she mentioned.
Mike?
Thanks, everyone.
2 questions or 2 comments did show up in the Q&A.
Okay.
One from Grace saying, amazing staff. Thank you all. The passcode in the alert was wrong.
Oops.
Oops, sorry. We will double check that for future ones. And then Jesse Attree asked, how about better masks for those of us with hearing aids? Too much on my ears.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll take that into consideration, how there might be a different kind of a mask that works better for those who are wearing hearing devices. Good question. Okay, anything else? All right, with that, I think we'll sign off for today and we'll see you on the 4th. Take care. Thank you all.